This conference will now be recorded.
Right. So in the last few sessions, we have discussed about internal tables. We'll come back to internal tables at later point of time. Now today we'll start with another important topic, modelization. Okay, modularization. Yeah. What is this modularization is? It is a process of breaking a program into individual sub blocks. Okay, modelization is a process of breaking a program into individual what blocks, into individual blocks. Okay, so when I say individual blocks here, instead of writing everything as a single program, I can divide that into what multiple parts, multiple blocks we call it as, so that the maintenance will be what easy. So as part of this ABAP, we have different modulation techniques. Like we have what subroutines, include programs, function models, methods. All these things comes under what modulation. Understood? It is a process of breaking the program into individual sub modules, sub blocks. We call it as what modulation. So let me directly get into the programming part so that we'll have better understanding. Right, so I'll go to SC38. Type of program is what? Same program, executable program. Type of program is executable. Let us save it in the local object. Yeah, here, yeah. What I'll do is I'll just provide some statements here. Okay, so some write statements I'm providing. So when I execute, I got the result. So nothing to discuss here. Now what I'll do is I'll provide some statements in between, like something Core Abap, Oops Abap, and this I'll say something Cross Apps Abap. Done. So observe here, these three statements, Core Abap, Oops Abap, Cross Applications Abap, I'll provide in multiple places in the program. I'll provide that in what? Multiple places in the program. Same set of statements are repeated at different places in the program. Okay, so when I execute, obviously it will be executed in sequence. I got the output. First I got allow, then core abap, oops abap, cross apps. Again I got welcome, core abap, oops abap, and cross, like this. So I can write like this. But what what I can do here is I can modularize this program. Means whatever the repeated statements are there, okay, that repeated statements, instead of writing it again and again, okay, we can put it in what? A separate block. So what are the statements which are repeating here? Core, oops, and cross. So these repeated statements I will enclose inside something called as a subroutine. Subroutine. So what is a subroutine? A subroutine is a block of statements which are defined, which is defined only once and can be called any number of times. I repeat, a subroutine is a block of statements which is defined only once but can be called any number of times. It can be called any number of times. Okay. So what I'll do now, I'll try to define the subroutine. This subroutine you can compare similar to function concept in C++ or similar to method concept in Java. So here, what are the statements which are repeating? I'll put it inside a subroutine. So related to subroutine, we have two sections. One is definition of the subroutine, another is calling the subroutine. Okay, we have to define only once. We can call it any number of times. So where to define the subroutine? Subroutines are always defined at the end of the program. So how do you define here? I'll say form. This is a syntax for defining the subroutine. You can give any name for the subroutine. Let me give the subroutine name as sub1. You can give any name. Don't think you have to give sub1. I can give ABC, XYZ. Whatever is there, I can give it. So I'll say form sub1. And here I'll say what? End form. Okay. Inside this form, end form, what are the statements are there? What are the statements which are repeating? I'll put it inside what? Subroutine. So something like this. I'll just remove it from here. I'm removing it from here. So what I did here, what are the repeated statements are there? I'm putting inside a subroutine. 1 second, please. 1 second. Yeah. So what I have done here, what are the statements which are getting repeated? I enclosed that statements inside a block definition, or we call it as what? Subroutine definition. How to define subroutine? Form, end form. So the syntax for defining the subroutine is, okay, syntax for subroutine definition is form subroutine name, okay, followed by parameters list. At this stage, we don't know how to deal with parameters, so parameter list and end form. So within that definition, I can write what? Any business logic. So I wrote some three write statements, right? So let's see what happens. I'll do one thing for our clarity. I'll just say, or else I'll just give some color. Format color one. I'll close this. Format color off. Okay. Save. Check for the syntax. Activate. I'll use a pretty printer for a proper alignment. Yes, it is aligned. Yeah, let me execute. Observe this. When I execute, what happened? What is the output I got? Hello, welcome, I, buy, and end of program. The statements inside the subroutine, they are not executed. I didn't got them in the output. Okay. So why? Because we have defined the subroutine, but we have not called the subroutine. If you want the subroutine to be executed, we have to call that subroutine. How do you call that subroutine? Wherever you want to call, you can call. Here I want to call. For calling, we have to use the keyword perform, followed by subroutine name, followed by parameters. I don't have any parameters, I'm not using it. Like this, I can call it wherever I want. Okay, I can call it wherever I want. So what I'm doing here, I'm defining the subroutine only once, but I'm calling that subroutine n number of times. This is the advantage of what? Subroutine. It increases the reusability. Subroutines increases what? Reusability, and the maintenance will become easy. Maintenance means in future, if the customer asks for any changes, okay, I can go for the appropriate subroutine and make the necessary changes. Suppose without subroutine, if you have written the statements at many places, in all the places I have to do the changes. But if you put it inside a block kind of like this, it is sufficient if you make the changes inside this block. Wherever we call it gets reflected. So when I execute, when I say F8, yes, you can see I got the output as what? Hello, Core Abap, oops, cross. Again, I got welcome, core, oops, cross, I, so on. So what is the point we have to focus here? A subroutine has to be defined only once, but can be called any number of times. So what is the syntax for calling the subroutine? Okay, syntax for calling is you have to say perform followed by what? Subroutine name followed by what? Parameters list followed by parameters list. As of now, I have defined the subroutine without any what? Parameters. So I got it. Okay. And where you have to define the subroutine? Always you have to define the subroutine at the end of the program. Suppose after this subroutine, I'll provide some statement like write statement. I'll provide some text. So when I do syntax check here, it is giving an error. 21st line statement is not accessible. So what you have to understand is blocks must always be defined at the end of the program. So after subroutine definitions, I cannot have any other statements. A program can contain any number of subroutines. Suppose now here somewhere here, I want to call another subroutine. Okay, I want to call another subroutine. So I'll say perform sub2. You can give any name. I'll give something sub2. So what I am doing here, I am trying to call a non-existing subroutine. I'm trying to call a non-existing subroutine. Let's see what happens. When I do syntax check, I got an error. The form sub2 does not exist, but there is a form with a similar name, what? Sub1. So every subroutine that we call has to be defined. So I need to define the subroutine. Where we have to define this subroutine? At the end only. And I can define the subroutines in any sequence, not compulsory that I should define the subroutine to at the end only. I can define in any sequence, doesn't matter, but SAP will execute in whatever sequence you call. So here I'll say something. Some statements I'm giving. Okay, I'll switch off the color. End of form. Save it. Check for the syntax. No errors. Execute this. What happened? I'm able to call the subroutine 2 also. So every subroutine that we call must be defined, and all the subroutines should be defined where? At the end of the program. At the end of the program. Okay. Now what I'll do somewhere here, I'll say perform sub 3, perform sub 3 in the parenthesis, in the parenthesis. Okay, I'll give this. I want to define this subroutine externally. Whatever I've done so far, whatever I've done so far, they are internal subroutines. Internal subroutine means which are defined as well as called within the same program. Internal subroutine means which are defined and called from the same program. Now I want to call external subroutine. So I can create it from here also, or else let me open another instance, another window. Right, so I'll go to SC38, just try to understand. I'll give the name of this as Z830 pool, S pool, I'll say some name I'll give. Okay, Z830 sub pool, I'll say some name. Okay, start with ZRY, create. I'll provide some meaningful title, right? So far, the last 30 examples, we have chosen the type of program as what? Executable program. And executable program always starts with what keyword? Yes, it starts with report keyword. Okay. Now I'll choose a type of program as subroutine pool. Pool means container. A subroutine pool is a container of what? External subroutines. Okay, subroutine pool is a container of external subroutines. So I'll choose the type of program as what? Subroutine pool. I'll save it. Subroutine pool starts with program keyword. If you create an executable program, it starts with report keyword. Subroutine pool starts with what? Program keyword. What I can do inside this, I can what? Define n number of external subroutines. So I'll say form, somewhere here I'll say form sub 3. Okay, I'll just give some color here. Inside what? Inside external subroutine sub 3. Okay, I'll just close the color, format color off. Okay, end form. What I can do here I can declare some global variables also. I'll say v underscore x type I. Okay, I'll give some value 10. I'll say v underscore y type I value 5. I'll declare another variable v underscore res type I. Okay, so here what I'll do, I'll say v underscore res is equal to v underscore x plus v underscore y. Then I'll say something, sum is what? V underscore res. Like this, inside this subroutine pool, I can declare n number of what? External subroutines. Let me give it a sub 4. I'll say color something 5. Inside external subroutine what? Sub 4. Okay, I'll provide some different business logic. I'll say difference is so and so. Save it, check for the syntax, activate your subroutine pool. Subroutine pool cannot be executed directly. It cannot be executed independently because it is not a executable program. If I try to execute, if I press F8, what happened? I got a message, Z830 subpool is not a report program. It is of type S. Type S is what? Subroutine pool. So it cannot be executed directly. So make sure that it is activated. I'll do one thing. Inside this, I'll try to define another subroutine. Form sub 2. I'll say format color 7. Okay, I'll say inside external subroutine sub 2, I'll close the color, format color off. Okay, end form. Okay, save it, check for the syntax search. So my subroutine pool contains some global variables. Okay, understood? If you declare these variables within this form end form, it becomes local. They can be used only within that block. I want to use it across many blocks, across many subroutines. So I declare them globally, means outside the subroutine definitions. I'm using them in sub 3 and sub 4. So activate your subroutine pool. What is the name? Z830 sub pool. Now I'll come back to my executable program. Somewhere here I'll say perform sub 2. Here I'll say perform sub 2. Okay, in the parentheses I'll say Z, what is that name? Z830 subpola. So here what happens, since I am not giving any subroutine pool name, it will check for this subroutine within this program. Yes, we have one program now. Within this program I am having the subroutine what? Sub 2. So here I'll just give the message for your understanding. Inside what? Internal subroutine sub 2. Clear? And here also I'll say inside internal subroutine what? Sub 1. Save it, check it, done. Right? So how do you call the external subroutines? You have to say perform sub 2. In the parentheses, you have to give that particular subroutine pool name. So when I execute, yes, you can see in between I called the external subroutine sub 2. If I don't give the subroutine pool name, it searches for that subroutine within the same program. Now somewhere here I want to call sub 3. So I'll say perform sub 3. In the parentheses, I'll say Z830 sub pool. I can do like this. Okay, sub 3, sub 3. Now I want to call sub 4 also. Somewhere here I want to call sub 4. So I'll say perform sub 4. I can see 830 sub pool. I can do like this, or else I can use another syntax. I can use another syntax. I can say, or here I'll say perform what? Sub 4 in program. In program, what is that? Z830 sub pool. Understood? I can give it in directly in the parenthesis, or I can use a syntax. There is no advantage, disadvantage. I can follow any of the syntax. So when I execute this, yes, I got the results from both internal subroutines and what? External subroutines. Am I clear? So let me, so what is the point we understood so far? A subroutine pool is a container of what? External subroutines. So in the program, I can go for internal subroutine or external subroutine. When do we go for external subroutine is when do we go for creating the subroutine external is if you want to access the same functionality across many objects, then we'll go for what? External subroutine. If the requirement is specific to a particular object, we'll go for internal subroutine. Let me try to debug this. I'll try to debug. I'll put the breakpoint here in the third line. Execute. Right. So see this. We are in which program now? Z830 program 32. Z830 program 32. Clear? Z830 program 32. I'm trying to execute this write statement. How do we execute one statement? F5. So I'll press F5. Already we have started with the debugging earlier in the initial sessions. Okay, so F5 is what? Single step. When I say F5, that current write statement might have got executed. If you see the output, yes, I got what? Hello. I got hello. Now, what is the next statement? It is about to execute perform sub 1. Did I mention any subroutine pool name here? No. So it will look for this subroutine within the same program. So when I say F5, as we are calling the subroutine, control jumps to what? Subroutine definition. Control jumps to subroutine definition. So see here, from the fourth line, control will jump to the definition of the subroutine. I'll say F5. I'll say F5. Yes. Within the same program, control is jumping to the 27th line. It is going inside the definition of the subroutine sub1. I'll say F5. It is about to execute this particular subroutine. So I got what is the statements got executed so far. Misrenders display list. Inside internal subroutine sub1, it has to execute this 3-4 statements further. It has to execute this 3-4 statement further. So when I say F5, it will execute them one by one. Am I clear? I am not interested to debug the rest of the statements. Okay, already this statement got executed. It is about to execute this 29th line. I am not interested to debug the rest of the statements in the block. Okay, so at any point of time, if you want to come out of the current block, if you want to come out of the current block, you can press F7. When you press F7, control will come out of the current block, current subroutine, and the control jumps to the next statement after the subroutine call. So what is the output generated so far? Inside internal subroutine sub1. So I'll say F7. Where is the control now? Inside the subroutine, inside the subroutine sub1. I'll press F7. What is this F7 here? Return, it seems. Return means control will return back to the next statement from where the subroutine was called. So let me press F7. Why I'm pressing F7? I'm not interested to debug the rest of the statement. So I'll say F7. So when you say F7, it will execute the statements internally. So I'll say F7. Okay, I'll press F7. Done. The control has came back to the fifth line. after the subroutine call. So internally it might have executed that statement. So I got the rest of the statement: score, oops, and cross. Done. Okay. Now where is the cursor? It is about to execute the fifth statement. It is about to execute the fifth statement. How do we execute this one line at a time? F5, na? We already know that. What is the current statement here? Write statement. So here I can press F5 or I can press F6. F6 is also for execute. So in this case, where I am having the right statement, whether I press F5 or F6, it doesn't matter. Whether I press F5 or F6, it doesn't matter. It will execute that single step. What is the output generated so far? Cross apps abap. This is the last output got generated. Now instead of pressing F5, I'll press F6. What happened? It has executed the right statement. It might have executed that welcome. So both F5 or F6 are executing what? Single step. But when you press F6, at the time of calling the blocks, when you press F6 at the time of calling the blocks, means at the time of calling the subroutines, or at the time of calling the function modules, or at the time of calling the methods, what happens is when you press F6, internally the block gets executed. Means what is the last output generated here? Yes, welcome. So here if I press F5, where is the cursor now? It is about to execute the sixth line. If you press F5, what happens? Control jumps to the definition of the subroutine sub1. Control will jump here. But I am not interested to debug the statements. I don't want the control to enter inside the subroutine. I want that block, I want that subroutine. When I say block here, I may refer to subroutine, I may refer to a function model, I may refer to a method. I am not interested to debug that block statements. I want that block statements to be executed internally. So what I'll do, I'll press F6. So when you press F6, internally the subroutine gets executed. So what is the output generated so far? Up to welcome I got. So let me press F6. I'll press F6. Yes, internally that subroutine might got executed. See the output here? Yes, that block got executed. Na? Am I clear? So when you don't want to debug any block definitions, instead of pressing F5 there, you press F6. Otherwise, if it is other than block, for normal statements, F5 and F6 will behave same. Both will execute one statement. Now again, we are trying to call another internal subroutine sub2. So if you press F5, control goes to sub2 definition. If you are not interested, I can press what? F6. So when I say F6, that block might got executed internally. Yes. What happened? That block got executed internally. Fine. Now we are saying perform sub2. In the parentheses, I gave some external program. So when you press F5, here also same story. Control jumps to what? Subroutine definition, which is available in this program. As of now, we are in 32nd program. So if you press F5, since the definition is available externally in this program, control will jump there. So just I want to show you that I can press F6 here also, so that internally that gets executed, but I want to show how the control is shifted from 32nd program to that particular subroutine pool. So let me press F5. Yes, control is going to what? Subroutine pool, and it is about to execute the statements of that subroutine too. I'll say F5. It gets, if you don't want to debug the further statements, at any point of time, if you want to come out of the current block definition, if you want to come out of subroutine definition, a function model definition, or a method implementation, you can press F7. Understood? Already we have entered the block. That block has got many statements. You are not interested to debug the rest of the statements of that current block. You can press what? F7. If you don't want the control itself to be shifted to the block definition, instead of pressing F5 at the time of calling itself, you press F6. Okay, so I'll press F7 here. It will come back to the calling program. Yes, it is coming back to the calling program. So that second block, external block got executed inside external subroutine sub2. Right? So I can press F5, F6 like this. We can shift the control from one part of the program to another part of the program. I'm not interested to debug the rest of the statements. I'll say F8. Yes, I got the rest of the statements got executed. This is the difference between F5, F6, F7 and F8. F5 and F6 will behave same for a normal statement, but F6 will behave differently at the time of calling the blocks. When you press F6 at the time of calling a block, internally the block definition gets executed. Okay, or if you have entered the block, if you want to come out of the current block at any point of time, you can press F7. If you press F8, the control jumps to the next breakpoint if available. Otherwise, execute the rest of the statements as a single step. So this is how you develop the internal subroutine and external subroutine. Any questions so far? Any questions? F5, F6, F7, F8. F5, F6 will behave same for a normal statement. But when you press F5 at the time of calling a block, means at the time of calling a subroutine, or at the time of calling a function model, or at the time of calling a method, control jumps to that block definition. If you are not interested to debug that block definition, instead of pressing F5, press F6 so that internally the block gets what executed. Suppose you have already entered the block, you have debugged some statements, you don't want to debug the further statements in the current block. To come out of the current block at any point of time, press F7. The control comes out of the current block, goes to the next statement from where the block was called. And when you press F8, control jumps to next breakpoint if available. Otherwise, it executes the whole program as a single step. Yeah, any questions before I move on?
Sir, uh,
Yes, I.
if I put breakpoint in function definition and if I press F8, then will it execute total or it will come to that breakpoint?
Inside the subroutine definition, you are saying,
Yes, sir. In form, inside
in
form,
form.
breakpoint.
Okay, so I'll put the breakpoint where in the 21st line. Okay, directly I am putting the breakpoint inside the subroutine 2. So when I say F8 now, the execution starts in the beginning, and whenever this breakpoint is encountered, it takes the control to the debugging mode. When this subroutine was called somewhere in the 7th line, when the statement got executed, control will jump here. At that time, when it is executing this block, it has encountered the breakpoint, it will stop there. So when I say F8 now, when I say F8, what happened here? It has stopped at that particular subroutine definition. So previous to that, what are the statements are there? It might have got executed. If you see the output generated so far, I got the statement got generated. Now you decide how you want to proceed further, whether you want to press F5 or you want to come out of the current block, or when you want to press F8 now. Since there is no further breakpoint, the whole program gets executed. Yeah, Sai, this is what you're asking?
Yes, sir. And if I put breakpoint inside form in another program,
Yeah, it will stop there.
then also same.
It will
Okay.
stop. Yes. If that subroutine is
Okay.
called, if that subroutine is called, definitely it has to stop, whether it is within the same program or external program. If that block is invoked, whenever the control jumps to that block, it will stop whenever it encounters a breakpoint. Okay, so
Thank you, sir.
yeah, I'll say F8 because I'm not interested to debug further. I'll say F8. I got the old statements. Yeah, any other questions further? So inside that block definitions, I can write any kind of business logic. As of today, I just wrote the right statements, I've done some calculations, but I can write any kind of business logic inside the subroutines. Okay, now a small change. Observe this change. I'll put the breakpoint somewhere in the sixth line. Okay, I'll execute. So it will stop whenever that sixth line is about to execute. No? It is stopping there. Session breakpoint is stopping there. It might have generated some output so far. Done. So when you call this subroutine, control jumps there. I'm not interested to debug. I'll say F6, F6. All these are getting executed internally. Okay, so this is the output generated so far. Up to I got. Up to I got. Now what I want is, so when you press F5, it will execute step by step. Already we are at the 10th line. Already we are at the 10th line. Now I want to again debug from the 5th line, or from the 5th line. I want to debug again from the 5th line. Already we have debugged up to 9th line. We are about to debug the 10th statement. I want to again I want to take the control back to the 5th line. I'm interested to debug from the previous statements. If I press F5, it will go to the forward direction. I want backward. So what I'll do, there are multiple ways I may able to do it. So what I'll do here, I'll put the cursor on the 5th line. I'll put the cursor on the 5th line. Where is the control now? In the 10th line. This is output generated so far. Up to what? I. But I want to debug from where? 5th line. So I'll put the cursor on the 5th line. Somewhere, yeah, what? Go to menu, navigate to, yeah, there are multiple, yeah, you can see debugger. What is this? Debugger menu, go to statement. Debugger menu, go to statement. Shift F12 is a shortcut. I don't remember shortcuts. So don't try to remember the shortcuts. Our agenda is not to remember shortcuts. Okay. So I'll choose debugger menu. I'll choose go to statement. Good. Where is the cursor now? 5th line. Am I clear? So now you decide how you want to proceed. I'll say F5 again. So welcome statement got executed again. What I got here, I got welcome again. Because again I am re-debugging from that line. I'll say F6, F6. So all the statements are getting executed once again. Same statements got executed once again. So what I'm trying to say is, we have a lengthy program, some 10,000 lines of code. You have started debugging from a particular point, you have debugged some statements. During debugging, you realized something, again you want to debug the previous statements. So from whichever statement you want to start the debugging again, put the cursor on that statement and choose the menu what? Debugger and what? Go to statement. So version to version, this menu item go to statement might be available in different menus. So check where it is available. In this version, it is available here. Version to version, it might available at different places. Okay. So I'm not interested further. I'll say F8. Any questions? Right. So far, we have created the external subroutines inside what? Subroutine pool. Na? We have created the external subroutines inside the subroutine pool. External subroutines need not be in the subroutine pool only. Need not be in the subroutine pool only. It can be inside other external program. That external program can be an executable program, or it can be what? Subroutine pool. Okay, it can be external, it can be in what? subroutine pool, or it can be what? External program. So what I want to tell here is, observe one second, please. Yeah, here, yeah, observe this. So far, we have designed this extra, we have created the subroutines in the subroutine pool. Now here only let me try to demonstrate. Somewhere here I'll say perform sub 5 or in program, or in the parentheses I can give. I'll say Z830 program 33. Okay, or I'll say Z830 underscore test program. Try to understand. Perform sub 5 in program so and so. Actually, this program is not there. This program is not there. So let's see what happens. Okay, save it. Check for the syntax. No syntax errors. When I execute, when I say F8, yes, what I got? I got the runtime error. Exception is raised from which class? CX underscore SY underscore program not found. We have the concept of exception classes that we'll be discussing when we get into object oriented programming. So program so and so is not found. So I got the runtime error. I got the runtime error. Why? Because the target program is not available. It is checking for that particular target program in the runtime. During the program execution, it is checking for that particular target program. Since it is not available physically, it leads to what? Runtime error as target program not found. Is it clear? So I'll comment it. If I don't comment, every time I'll get the runtime error. I'll do one thing. Perform sub 5 in program. Observe this carefully. In program, I'll give it a Z830 program 33. We are in which program? Program 32. Now this program is also not there now. Let me try to create. Observe this carefully. I'll double click. I need not open another session. I need not create this program separately. I can create it from here only. Subroutine pool also I can create from here only. I'll double click on this. It is saying that program does not exist. Do you want to create? Yes. What do you want? Okay. What type of program? Oh, what type of program it is asking? Okay. So this is a program. When I say continue, yeah, what type of program here? Executable program. Okay, I'll save it. Done. So the program is available. Let me save it. Check for the syntax error. Activate this program. So program is physically available, but in this, I'll come back. In this program, I don't have any subroutine with the name what? Sub 5. Earlier, this program itself was not there. I got the runtime. Now the program is there. Just now created and activated. But this program doesn't have this subroutine. So what happens? Let's see that. So save it, check for the syntax, no errors, execute F8. I got a different runtime error. I got the exception from which class? CX underscore SY underscore dynamic call illegal form. Call to a non-existing external routine. The reason for the exception is program 32 is trying to execute an external perform sub 5 of the program 33. This routine does not exist, however. So program is there, but the program doesn't have that particular what subroutine. So what I'll do here, let me try to create. So I'll open here. I'll create form what sub 5. I'll just give some color. Inside external subroutine sub 5 something. I'll close the color, format color off. Okay, end form, end form. Save it, check for the syntax, activate this. Right. If I execute this directly, nothing will happen because we are not calling this subroutine from here. I'll go back to the calling program, save it, check for the syntax, done. Execute this. Yes, I got inside external subroutine sub 5. So what I am trying to convey here is external subroutines are available in what? External programs. That external program can be a subroutine pool, or it can be what? Executable programs. Yeah, any questions? No questions, huh? One second.
Sir,
Yes, yes, Sai.
uh, can we call subroutines inside subroutine pool
Yeah,
like perform statements?
okay. Yeah. Suppose here this sub2 is there, which is there inside the subroutine pool or some other program. Okay. So if you go to this subroutine, let me open change mode. I'll open this in change mode. I'm in sub 3. Okay. Here I can call another subroutine, my wish. I'll say perform sub 6. If I leave it like this, probably it will check for this within the same subroutine pool. Okay. Am I clear? So here I'll say something what? Form what? Sub 6. Inside external subroutine what? Sub 6. So what is the meaning here? One subroutine can call what? Another subroutine. So here I'm trying to call, since I didn't mention any program name, it will check for this it will check for this within the same program. If it is available in some other program, the same story. You give that name in the brackets or in program, whatever it is. So save it, check for the syntax, activate. I'll put the breakpoint in sub 3, where I'm calling sub 3 here only. Na? So see this. I'm in this program 30-second now. I'm in the 30-second program. I'm trying to call the sub 3, which is available in the subroutine pool. I'll say F5. Control has jumped to that particular subroutine pool. It has jumped to that particular subroutine pool. It will execute these statements. It might have executed these statements. So if you see the output generated so far, inside external subroutine sub 3, I got the sum is 15. Now I'm calling another subroutine sub 6, which is available within the same program. Na? Right? Since I didn't give any external program name here, it will search for that within the same programs. When I say F5, yes, it is coming there, it will execute this. Like this, the story continues. So what is the meaning? One subroutine can be called from what? Another subroutine. One subroutine cannot be defined inside another subroutine definition, but one subroutine can be called from another subroutine. Yeah, any questions further?
So then what is the difference between executable program and subroutine pool?
Subroutine pool can contain only subroutine definitions, can contain only form end forms, whereas executable programs can contain any kind of statements. Na? Is it clear, Sai? This subroutine pool can contain variable declarations, can contain what? Block definitions. Suppose here I'll say write something I, save it, check for the syntax, it is giving an error. Am I clear? So make sure
Okay,
that subroutine pool contains only subroutines. Or if you want, you declare some global variables, which I can use across other subroutines. But whereas executable programs can contain any kind of statements. It can contain write statement, it can call a subroutine, it can call a function model, it can call a method. Any kind of business logic can be available inside a executable program, right?
yes, sir, thank you.
Yeah, Jyoti,
You have, you have given some assignment in tabbed blocks.
correct.
Further, For that, can I use these subroutines?
Anywhere I can use subroutine. Wherever
For,
ABAP coding is involved, everywhere I can use subroutines.
so, by using subroutine only, I can call the program in some other I can call the code from other programs. Is there any other
No,
ways?
I didn't get your
Only
point.
subroutine. Uh,
I
in
I didn't got your point.
okay. Uh, in tablet block assignment, you said that give do programming in some other tablet blocks and call the tablet block of
No, I did said like that. I said in the example which I covered is I you can mute your speakers, Jyoti. I got your point. Let me convey
yes,
that to
yes,
everyone. Yeah, what I have done is on my selection screen, I took a tabbed block. I designed two tab buttons. Since we have two tab buttons, I require two subscreens. What I did, I designed the two subscreens within the same program, right? What I told is you design the subscreens in other program and refer to that subscreen inside this tab button. That's what I said. But that is nowhere related to
yes, sir, exactly.
subroutines. That is nowhere related to
Uh,
subroutine.
by using subroutine, can I call that program to this
No,
one?
no, no. First of all, why we have to call? Why we have to call?
Uh, if I want to create a tablet block of tab, if I define tablet block in some other program and if I want to
No, no,
call it
no, no,
from
no, 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 no. Don't say tabbed blocks. Here, I designed the tabbed block in program one. Okay, try to understand.
yes,
I've taken
yes,
two tab buttons like
yes, sir,
TB1 and TB2. Okay, so obviously in this program only you will have the tab buttons. Wherever the tabbed block is there only you'll have the tab buttons. What I did,
yes,
I designed one subscreen one in which program? In the same program.
yes.
I designed a
Subscreen,
subscreen 2 in the same program.
yes, sir,
Okay. So what I did, I associated. You can mute your speakers, Jyoti. Disturbance is coming. Okay. Yeah. So what I did here, for these two tab buttons, I have associated the subroutines. How I associated? Assume this tab button name is T1. This is T2, and tabbed block name is TB1. Okay, so what I did in my program in the function code, assume this is FC1, this is FC2. So what I did here, when FC1, if the user clicks on the first tab button, what I did, TB1 hyphen active tab equal to what, that particular function code FC1. Then I said TB1 hyphen DVNNR equal to, assume this subscreen number is 100, this subscreen 2 is what, something 200. Okay, so what I said, DVNNR equal to 200, I said. Then I said TB1 hyphen program equal to, I have to tell SAP, okay, or this is 100 years, I have to tell SAP in which program this 100 subscreen is there. This 100 subscreen I designed in the same program. Na? So what I did here, I refer to what? Rep ID. Rep ID. And if the user clicks on the second tab also, I said when FC2, I'm activating that tab. I'm attaching that subscreen 200. And we are telling SAP that this subscreen 200 is there in what program? Same program, Rep ID. The assignment I told is, you design this subscreen to 200 in program 2, I said, in program 2. So at that time, I cannot say like this, na? Because SciRapid refers to what? Current program. Current program is, obviously we are writing this logic in what? Program 1. This 200 is designed where? In program 2. So just you have to give that program name in uppercase. That's all. That is the adjustment you have to do. make sure that in this program too you design this subscript. Is it clear, Jyoti? You
Sir,
need
yes.
not call them. Just you have to set the program name. Program name itself will control that,
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
right?
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other doubts, others? Okay. So I'll stop for today. This F5, F6, F7, F8 are very important. I request everyone to go through this recording this weekend. Okay. This internal subroutine, external subroutine. So that from Monday onwards, again, we'll not focus on this F5, F6, F7, F8. Since we are already done, I'll directly start using them. F5, F6, F7, F8. For the rest of the course, the concept will remain what? Same. So refer to the recording. Next class, what we will do is, as of today, we are defining the subroutine without any parameters. From Monday onwards, we'll define the subroutine with parameters. We'll see how to pass ordinary variables as parameters. We'll see how to pass internal tables as parameters. Already we know internal tables. Again, we'll not focus on creating the internal table. Since we are already strong in that, we'll directly create the internal table. We will focus on how to pass it as a parameter to subroutine. Again, we will not discuss what is append, what is loop, what is refresh free. All those things are gone. Okay. So I'll directly focus on what? Other areas from Monday onwards. Okay. So I'll stop for today. For the next 2-3 days, we'll discuss these things only. Subroutines include programs, function models. Methods we cannot discuss now. This comes under object oriented. When we start Oops Abap, there we'll be covering this particular methods. Okay, so next 2 days or 3 days, we'll continue with subroutines, include programs, function models, which is again base for the rest of the course. Work area, internal table, subroutines, include programs, function models. We'll use almost in every requirement. In the real time, almost in every requirement, we'll use these 5 things. Work areas, internal tables, subroutines, include programs, and function models. So we should be very strong in this. So I suggest those who are not started practicing, start practicing and focus on these things. Otherwise, it will be difficult going forward. Okay. Chalo then. So I'll wind off for today. We'll continue again on Monday. Any questions before I log off? Someone send me mail. Rohit, I saw your mail. In that program, you have used the internal tables. So try to achieve that. Try to achieve that without using internal tables. Whatever you have done might be absolutely correct, but without using internal tables also, can we do? You try it,
Okay, okay, sir. Okay.
right? Okay. Chalo then. So I'll wind off. We'll meet again on Monday then. Chalo. Thanks everyone.